What started as a slow day quickly turned into an intense one when Officer Mark arrested a young girl named Maya and her brother Leo. Little did he know that just 12 minutes later, he would deeply regret that decision. It was a routine day for Officer Mark as he patrolled the streets, attentively scanning for any suspicious individuals who might disturb the community's peace. The streets were mostly empty, children were in school, and most adults were at work. He only encountered a lone car every few minutes, making it feel like he was the only one on the road. However, as he turned a corner, Mark noticed two people walking down the side of the road. A teenage boy, no older than 18, was holding the hand of a little girl around 9 years old. They walked hand in hand, laughing, and the girl was jumping up and down. Mark's interest was piqued. He found their presence suspicious since the girl should have been in school, and the teenager either at work or school. Convinced they were up to no good, Mark resolved to get to the bottom of it. He pressed the pedal of the patrol vehicle and quickly caught up with them, pulling over beside the duo. Stepping out of the vehicle with a frown, Mark walked around to face them. "Where are you coming from, and where are you going?" Mark demanded, his voice firm. The teenage boy stepped forward and introduced himself as Leo, explaining that the little girl, Maya, was his 9-year-old sister. Leo said they were simply on their way home and meant no trouble. "You look like trouble," Mark responded, his eyes narrowing. "And you sound like a liar." The officer then turned his attention to Maya, stating that she should be in school, not on her way home. He insisted that Leo was lying to avoid punishment. At that point, Maya spoke up. "My brother isn't lying," she said, her voice innocent yet firm. "We're coming from the hospital. I've been sick for a while and we're just now going home." She turned and pointed to a house not far away. "That's our house." Mark looked at her as if she'd suddenly grown horns. He knew the hospital was a 15-minute walk from there, and he doubted a sick child would be able to walk the entire way on foot. He was now certain that Maya was lying to protect her brother. If Leo needed protection, that must mean he was involved in something shady, something Mark wasn't about to let go. "Why are you both together during school hours?" Mark asked again, his suspicion growing. Surprised by the officer's tone, Leo explained once more that Maya was his younger sister, and they were simply walking home together after her hospital visit. But Mark wasn't interested in their explanation. He was convinced they were hiding something, and he was going to do everything in his power to find out what it was. Suddenly, Mark accused Leo of being a drug dealer. "People like you love to do these kinds of things," Mark said, his voice full of accusation. He began searching Leo for drugs or weapons. When he found nothing, his frustration boiled over. He grabbed Leo by the collar and slammed him against the side of the patrol car, making Maya scream in terror. Mark sneered down at Leo, tightening his grip, his eyes wild with anger. "Do you actually think you can outsmart me?" he snarled. "I know your kind, always hiding something. If I have to tear this whole neighborhood apart, I'll find what you're stashing." Maya, her small frame trembling, tried to intervene. She pulled at Mark's arm with all her might. "Please leave him alone," she cried, tears streaming down her face. But Mark's grip only tightened, and he shoved Leo harder against the car, causing him to wince in pain. Leo choked, his eyes full of terror, yet he managed to speak. "We're not trying to cover anything up. You're just being aggressive." Mark's rage hit a new peak. He yanked Leo away from the car and threw him to the ground. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life, punk," he snarled. In that moment, Mark's true nature was laid bare. He was no longer just a cop on a power trip. He was a man who took pleasure in exerting control over those who couldn't fight back. Maya, now full of fear but unyielding in her determination, looked at Mark with tear-streaked eyes. "You'll regret this. I promise, someone will see what you're doing, and you'll be the one in trouble." But Mark only laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think anyone cares about a couple of kids like you? You're nothing but a nuisance." Leo, still on the ground, couldn't believe what was happening. He swore that he wasn't any of the things Mark was accusing him of. In response, Mark pushed him down again, ordering him to shut up. When Leo tried to get back to his feet, Mark shoved him down once more. Next, Mark began pulling out his handcuffs, ready to arrest Leo. "Nobody harasses a cop and walks free," Mark shouted. Leo was shocked. He was the one being harassed, yet Mark was determined to throw him in jail. When Leo tried to resist, Mark became rough with him, pressing him harder against the patrol car. Leo continued to claim his innocence, shouting that Mark had no right to arrest him. But the officer, unmoved, told him that he was going away for a long time. Just as Mark was about to shove Leo into the patrol car, Leo's frustration boiled over. With a surge of adrenaline, he kicked the patrol car door with unexpected force. The door slammed back into Mark, sending a sharp pain through his ribs. "What the hell?" Mark yelled, staggering slightly. Seizing the moment, Leo took off running. His heart raced in his chest as he sprinted toward a nearby alley, adrenaline propelling him forward. Maya called after him, begging him to stop, but Leo couldn't. He wasn't about to let a corrupt cop lock him up for something he didn't do. Furious now, Mark recovered quickly and yelled, "Get back here, you little punk." He grabbed his radio to call for backup but hesitated, deciding to handle this on his own. A predatory grin spread across his face as he reached for his baton and dashed after Leo. Leo could feel Mark gaining on him as he darted around a corner, his lungs burning. But the alley he had turned into was a dead end. Trapped, he spun around to face the advancing officer, who now had his baton out, eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can run from me?" Mark growled, stalking toward Leo like a predator closing in on its prey. "I'll teach you a lesson." Leo's back was literally and figuratively against the wall. Desperation surged within him, giving him strength. He grabbed a nearby trash can lid and used it as a makeshift shield, bracing himself for the impact. Mark swung the baton with all his might, but Leo blocked it with the lid, the force of the blow reverberating through his arms. Mark's face twisted with anger at the defiance. He swung again, harder this time, determined to break through Leo's defense. But Leo wasn't giving up. With a surge of energy, he pushed the lid forward, slamming it into Mark's chest and knocking him back a few steps. The move surprised Mark, but it also fueled his rage even further. "Enough!" Mark roared, charging at Leo and knocking the lid from his hands. The lid clattered to the ground as Mark grabbed Leo by the collar, lifting him slightly off the ground and slamming him against the wall. Leo gasped for air, the impact driving the wind out of him. Mark's face was inches from Leo's, his breath hot and stinking of fury. "You think you're tough, huh?" Mark hissed, his grip tightening. "You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing." Leo's vision blurred from the pressure on his neck, but he refused to look away. He glared at Mark, every ounce of defiance he had left burning in his eyes. Just as Mark raised his baton for another strike, a loud, piercing voice echoed down the alley. "Stop! Get away from him!" Mark froze, turning his head to see Maya standing at the entrance of the alley, her phone held high, recording everything. "Let him go, or I swear, this video is going viral." Mark's eyes widened in shock. He lowered his baton and took a step back, caught off guard by Maya's threat. She stood defiantly, her hands trembling, but her grip on the phone was steady. "You think you're untouchable?" Maya said, her voice shaking but fierce. "Everyone's going to know what you did." Mark's heart raced as he processed the gravity of the situation. The last thing he wanted was to be caught on camera mistreating two innocent kids. Realizing he had no choice, Mark began to loosen his grip on Leo. He quickly reached for the handcuffs on Leo's wrists and fumbled to unlock them. His tone shifted dramatically as he stammered, "I'm sorry, kid. It was all a misunderstanding." But neither Leo nor Maya bought the sudden change. Maya continued recording, her phone held steady as Mark stumbled over his words, trying to justify his actions. I thought you were someone else," Mark mumbled. "There was a report of a suspect matching your description. I made a mistake." Maya's eyes narrowed. "A mistake?" she echoed. "You nearly beat my brother, and now you're calling it a mistake?" Leo, still trembling, stepped back, rubbing his wrists where the handcuffs had left red marks. "You're not sorry," he said quietly. "You're just scared." Mark swallowed hard, knowing they were right. His career, his reputation, it was all hanging by a thread now. Desperate, he turned to Maya, trying to smile. "Hey, kid, we're friends, right? No need to make a big deal out of this." Maya recoiled, her face full of disgust. "You're not my friend," she spat. "You're the worst kind of person." Just then, another voice joined the confrontation. "What's going on here?" A young woman, holding a phone of her own, approached them. "I've been recording everything." Mark turned to face the new arrival. "Who are you?" he demanded, though his tone had lost its previous authority. "My name is Bella," the woman replied, her eyes hard. "I'm a human rights activist, and I've been following rumors about a corrupt cop in this neighborhood. Looks like I found him." Mark's blood ran cold. Bella continued, her phone still aimed at him. "I know exactly who you are, Mark. And so does everyone watching this live stream right now. Thousands of people are seeing what you did to these kids." Bella then turned to Leo and Maya. "You two are safe now. He won't hurt you anymore." Realizing he had been caught red-handed, Mark forced a weak smile. "It's all just a misunderstanding," he stammered again, desperately trying to salvage the situation. But it was too late. In just 12 minutes, his life had unraveled. The video had already spread online, and Mark knew there was no escaping the consequences this time. His family's influence wouldn't save him. In a last-ditch effort, Mark released Leo and Maya, his hands trembling as he fumbled with the cuffs. "I'm sorry." "You can go," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He avoided eye contact, already feeling the weight of his mistake crashing down on him. Desperation clawed at his chest as he tried to salvage his crumbling authority. "There was a report of a suspect matching your description," he stammered, offering a weak excuse for his behavior. Leo rubbed his wrists, glaring at the officer, but remained silent. He could see the fear in Mark's eyes, a stark contrast to the brutality he had shown moments ago. Maya stood frozen, clutching her phone tightly, unsure if they were really free or if Mark would change his mind at the last second. The tension between them hung heavy in the air. Without another word, Mark bolted toward his patrol car, his mind racing as panic gripped him. He jumped into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut, his hands shaking as he fumbled to start the engine. His heart was pounding, adrenaline still coursing through his veins, but now it wasn't from the power he had felt moments ago. It was from sheer terror. The situation had spiraled out of control, and he knew he couldn't take it back. He sped away from the scene, tires screeching as he hit the gas. His pulse raced as fast as the patrol car, his mind a chaotic mess of fear and regret. His eyes darted to the rearview mirror, half expecting Leo and Maya to be standing there, phones still recording, their eyes full of defiance. The image haunted him as he turned corner after corner, trying to outrun the growing sense of doom settling in his chest. By the time Mark pulled up to the station, his hands were slick with sweat, his nerves frayed. He could see through the glass windows that something had already changed. Officers, usually relaxed and joking, were gathered in small, tense groups. Some had their eyes glued to their phones, others were whispering in hushed tones. The energy in the station had shifted, and it was clear they weren't just watching the usual news cycle, they were watching him. He swallowed hard, stepping out of the car and into the station. His eyes scanned the room, and his heart sank as he realized that several of his colleagues were watching the live stream of his confrontation with Leo and Maya. The weight of what was happening hit him like a freight train. They had seen everything, every moment of his violent outburst, every word of his racially charged threats. There was no coming back from this. Mark's breaths grew shallow as he approached his desk, feeling eyes boring into him from all sides. He wanted to scream, to tell them they didn't understand, that it had been a mistake, but deep down he knew there was no excuse for what he had done. His colleagues had always turned a blind eye to his behavior before, but this time, they wouldn't. The video was spreading like wildfire, and the public's outrage was growing by the second. As Mark sat down, he saw an email notification flash across his computer screen. Formal investigation launched, Officer Mark's conduct. His heart dropped into his stomach. The process had already begun. Despite his family's deep roots in the police force and their past ability to shield him from consequences, this time was different. The public wasn't going to let it slide. Too many people had seen the video, and the outrage was deafening. His family had tried to intervene, but the tide of justice was too strong. No one could stop it. Days passed, and the investigation quickly unearthed more than just his treatment of Leo and Maya. Reports of racial bias, unlawful arrests, and outright corruption began to surface. Cases that had been quietly swept under the rug were now being dragged into the light. Mark could feel the walls closing in around him. It was as if the very force that had protected him for so long was now turning against him, exposing his darkest deeds to the world. The community, once too afraid to speak out, now roared with celebration when the news broke that Mark had been fired. His termination wasn't just a quiet dismissal, it was made public to assure the citizens that justice had been served. The officer who had terrorized them for years was finally gone, stripped of his badge, his authority, and his power. The streets buzzed with relief and triumph. Mark had been the face of their fear for too long, and now he was nothing. As for Mark, he was left with nothing. His career in law enforcement was over, and no other police department would take him. With his name and reputation tarnished beyond repair, he was forced to move to another town where no one knew him, hoping to start over. But it was too late for redemption. The weight of his actions clung to him like a dark cloud, following him wherever he went. The faces of Leo and Maya haunted his dreams. The screams of other victims echoed in his mind. He had spent years hiding behind the power of his badge, but now that it was gone, he was left with only the bitter reality of his choices. He regretted everything. His treatment of Leo and Maya, his bias against the black community, and the power trips that had consumed his life. He wished he could turn back time, undo the hatred and corruption that had driven his every action, but it was too late. The damage had been done, and there was no going back. In the aftermath of Mark's downfall, the community breathed a collective sigh of relief. Leo and Maya, once targets of injustice, became symbols of resilience and courage. Their bravery in the face of a corrupt system inspired many, proving that standing up for what is right, even when you feel powerless, can create meaningful change. Bella's intervention not only saved the siblings but also highlighted the power of solidarity and using one's voice to expose wrongdoing. Mark's swift fall from grace served as a reminder that those who abuse power and act on prejudice will ultimately face the consequences of their actions. No one is untouchable, and justice, though sometimes delayed, will find its way to the truth. This story leaves us with a powerful message. Courage and perseverance can triumph over oppression. Maya and Leo's small yet defiant act of standing up to an unjust system serves as a beacon of hope for anyone facing adversity. It also reinforces the importance of accountability and fairness, reminding us that every person deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of their background. What would you have done in Maya's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one. Thanks for watching.